Greetings, my name's Andrew Sumner. My grandfather, Pop Smythe, bought me my first comic book in Liverpool, England, when I was 3 years old, and I spent the next 50 years hurtling around the pop culture kaleidoscope, first as a fan, and then as a journalist, editor, publisher and presenter. Along the way, I met a bunch of interesting people who will be joining me here, creators, performers, professionals and public servants. We live in divisive, fractured times, but art and popular culture connect people from all viewpoints and from all walks of life. I'm often struck by the passions people enjoy, that they can set aside their differences for and agree on whatever those passions are, whether I share them or not. And that spark, that moment of instinctive, connective agreement, that's what I call a hard agree.
Oh, squid. No, you can't say octopi because it's not a Latin
Excellent.
word. It's right. It's octopuses.
Is that right? Is that right?
So if you say octopuses,
really?
You're right.
Oh, fantastic! I love it. Yeah, that's it. Well, you know what? That's down for my thing I've learned for today already. That's brilliant. Octopuses. You know, I'm sure I've grown up listening to people say things like, I am certain I've heard said. Yeah.
Academically inclined, I wouldn't say particularly bright, but academically inclined people are always doing stuff like that. I'm fine. Well, I'm sort of fine.
How you doing, Mike?
Yeah, guess I'm fine. Oh dear, we're wearing the same shirt today. They won't be able to tell us apart.
Yes, so true. So just as well I had a shave earlier.
Oh, get my glasses off. That'll help. I think. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Oh, okay.
Well, this one's audio only, so we're all good. So I've just got the cameras on. On our last conversation, Mike, just to recap, we talked about your parents. We talked about your dad's estimation of Arthur C. Clarke. We discussed your all-new upcoming Elric of Melniboné novel. We talked a little bit about Jerry Cornelius and the concept of the multiverse. And I'd like to come back in more detail about both of those things on a future episode. We talked about your friendship with the author Andrea Dworkin. And we talked about your movie years, as you wrote about in your book, Letters from Hollywood. And it's Michael Moorcock, the movie years, that I'd like to get into detail on in this episode. But before we start again, I'll just say welcome to Hard Agree. I'm Andrew Sumner, and welcome to my very special returning guest as part of our ongoing conversation.
How's your dad, by the way? I mean,
yeah. Yeah, no, he's great. My dad's in great shape. When you had that, you know, those relations with Irvin Kershner. How do you look back on it now?
Nightmare.
You know, how do you think of that period of time?
Kershner, he was rather. They both Kershner and Fust, who did the final program, had it in their heads. They'd both had successes which really didn't have much to do with them. The Dr. Phibes films could have been put together by anybody who had, contact with 20 British character actors, who knew exactly what they were supposed to do and frequently ad-libbed it and did it and went home, and that was it. But that was the Dr. Phibes films. People loved them and they did well. So EMI then let him have the final program, which I didn't really want him to have, but nonetheless, by that time EMI were controlling it. They had they'd put all the money in. And so that was Fust anyway, and I've already talked about that. Kershner actually came through a friend of mine who was the producer of the final program, Sandy. Oh God, Sandy's name's just gone out of my head. I've known it for years. I'm sorry. This happens to me. This has happened to me all my life. I'm terrible at proper names.
Yeah, it happens to me all the time as well. So I really do empathise.
He'd been a producer of the final program and had really been the person who understood the final program and was actually asking me to rewrite Fust's script as Fust was, buggering it up as far as we were concerned. And so I did. I actually wrote free over a weekend a new script for Sandy. But anyway. Sandy remained a friend and remains a friend. He's American, but he lives in England. And he was working then. He started working for the Lad Company, I think. and Kershner had a job from the Lad Company to do a Lancelot picture, a King Arthur picture. And he wanted it to be as good a King Arthur picture as it could be. They all say that. I mean, I remember Milton Subotsky saying that about Last Siege of the Saxons, which was an Amicus film, I think, and it covered 2,000 years of history because of the number of library shots he'd used, and then had to try to match the costumes to the library shots. That it was amazing. I mean, it had Robin Hood and King Arthur. Everybody was in it at a distance.
Yeah. Everyone's been trying to make the definitive King Arthur movie for my entire life, and I'm ballsing it up for my entire life. That's what is always
Sandy
the case.
Lieberson.
Was it Sandy Lieberson?
Very, very nice guy, and very easy to work with, and very smart. I mean, he's a really good old-fashioned film producer of the best kind. And I think in the end he gave it up and started teaching or something, because it's it can be a horrible job. Anyway, so he said to me, Kershner was looking for a writer for this King Arthur picture. As it happened, Linda was in Los Angeles and I was in London trying to sort out the remains of my previous marriage, which was a nightmare, because having said she was up and down on the whole thing, poor woman. I mean, she wasn't particularly stable. And I don't like to say this about somebody's mother, because her son is such a nice guy and a very sort of nice, straight guy. But anyway, she had her points, but obviously, but she wasn't. She was, so in the middle of all this, she was actually either taking Valium and pretending to kill herself, or she was coming at me with a kitchen knife about 18 inches long. And there was one just ludicrous scene where I wasn't working on the script at that point, but this was the situation I was in, where I was trying to do the great rock and roll swindle for, the Sex Pistols newspaper it was. We did a newspaper that was supposed to give, and I think it was given away with the movie. Anyway, so I was trying to do that.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, she's coming at me. I had to sort of bolt the door. I think she'd already smashed the bolt off the door that I'd put on. This is in my office, as it were. And she managed to do that. Anyway, and I've got this image of writing that with a knife, this big knife coming around the door while I'm trying to keep it closed. And the heel came off my boot at the same time. So I'm sort of, the whole thing becomes a total farce, because she's also taken Valium, enough to make her go to sleep eventually. And eventually she does. But this time I've got her in the pictures where she says she wants to go. And I'm thinking, well, the pictures are going to be safer than anywhere else, so we'll go to the pictures. But then she falls dead asleep in the pictures. I have to carry her home. I mean, the whole thing was it. And I mean, this was just one scene of many scenes I never want to go through again. I'm not a natural, as it were, drama queen. I don't get off on drama. And there was a lot of drama before that marriage was over. Anyway, so I really wanted to go back to Los Angeles. And so eventually I took the job for that reason. He said, you can do it here, you can do it in England. I said, no, don't worry. I'll come over there and do it. And I took the Concorde. I spent the entire, I mean, which is, I suppose, supposed to be a return fare. But anyway, I spent it. In those days, Concorde was only about double what it cost to fly norm. So it wasn't hugely expensive. I think it's about 700 quid. But anyway, I'd always wanted to go on Concorde. I thought, bugger this, I'll do the job, but I'm going on Concorde. So I went to Concorde. Linda met me, and I went on Concorde. Linda met me, and eventually we took the train down to LA, and I started working. And Kershner turned out to be even more of a nightmare than Fused. I mean, these people I know very well because I've met them and I've even worked with them, that they're extremely sane, well-focused film directors. They exist. They make very good films. They're efficient, they're businesslike, they teach people a thing or two while they're doing whatever they're doing. People all say, Kershner was not one of those film directors. He actually wanted to be one of those. He wanted to be an auteur. Both Fust and Kershner wanted to end up their lives, being known as the sort of Kurosawa of the Cockney Kurosawa or the Hollywood, whatever. And they weren't good enough at it. They just weren't. I mean, but they've both been lucky. Kershner had the Star Wars job, which I think, as I said before, my dog Spot could have directed and become and got a Hollywood job next, as it were. Yeah. And Fust had the Vibes jobs, both of which had been incredibly lucky for them.
And both of which were kind of producer-led movies,
because I think Kershner got rid of Lee Brackett, probably the best scriptwriter you could possibly have got for any movie, really. Yeah. Crime, Western, you name it. Lee could do it. And she was the originator of most of the stuff, or at least a good deal of the stuff that they were using. I mean, she was a genre, as it were, mover, she was an original. And getting rid of Lee I didn't know that he'd done this at the time, because Lee had been ill, and by the time I got there, I think she died. She was a friend of mine, but
yeah.
Oh God!
And had such an amazing pedigree as a screenwriter.
I mean, she had some bad ones as well, but she knew they were bad too. And as did Hawks some of the time. She when she was doing the next movie after Rio Bravo that Hawks did, which is exactly the same as Rio Bravo. I think it was called Bravo Rio or something very close. Yes, that's right. Yeah,
Rio Lobo was one of those ones. And there's about three of them that are almost identical, right? It's Rio Bravo, Rio Lobo, El Dorado as well. They're all the same
you
film.
Don't need me. You just need to remake it. He said, no, I want you to make. So I mean, she knew exactly what the movie business was like. She was very well grounded, and I'm very sorry that she didn't live to do that. Empire Strikes Back. Anyway, he'd got the Empire Strikes Back, which is probably the worst of the Star Wars movies. I haven't seen them all, but I certainly didn't like it very much. But I had to watch it because he sat next to me while the bloody thing screened. Not just that, but other movies he'd made, which were all sequels. He'd made Return of the Man Called Horse.
Yes, correct. He made SPYS, didn't he? The kind of, it was a film that reunited Donald Sutherland and Elliot Gould after they'd done MASH.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but they recast them as spies. Yeah, and it's the only thing that recommends that movie is they've still got their chemistry. Yeah, but the film itself. But when you look at his filmography, with the exception of arguably Empire Strikes Back. Yeah.
Did he? I didn't.
A Fine Madness he did, didn't he?
Because he did a James Bond movie. Did that too. A Bad Guy.
Oh yeah, he did Never Say Never Again. He did. He did the bad. He did the bad Connery. He did the Connery reunion movie.
He wasn't the most talented film director. Like a lot of them, he'd been and I think he'd started as an artist or a photographer or something, and gradually, but it was he actually sat there. I mean, I've put all this, as you know, in Letters from Hollywood, and I'm kind of repeating myself, but most people haven't seen that book, so
yeah. I'm gonna link to that in the show notes for this, by the way, if anybody's listening, because Letters from Hollywood is well worth picking up and checking out, which I've done since our last conversation. I think it's a phenomenal book, but it's like with anything, it's very interesting. It's very interesting hearing you tell this story. In addition to just reading it, if that makes sense.
I agree. I know what you mean. Yeah. So anyway, he'd done all these unsuccessful films with one or two. There's something. Eyes of Laura Mars. Did he make that? Yeah, and that one, I think that's right. That was him too. Made them decide to use him. Anyway, all he did was badmouth scriptwriters. And I'm looking at some of these movies. I'm thinking, that's one of the best scriptwriters in Hollywood. That's Jack so-and-so. That's Walter so-and-so. I mean, I'm thinking they can't all have been that bad because these guys I don't know a huge amount about Hollywood, but I do know that these guys have got reputations, and I've seen some of the other films, and they've done some very good films. So eventually, obviously, there's one common denominator there, and you think, oh, and I said to Sandy later, I said, why the hell did you give me that job? Recommend me for that job. He said, well, I knew it was difficult, and I thought you could probably handle it. And I said, I wish you'd told me before that he was difficult. At least I'd have been prepared. And Sandy just laughed. I mean, it wasn't Sandy's fault. He thought he was doing me a favor. This man wanted. He said in the end, this is when we'd been working on idiotic ideas for a long time, where I was trying to kind of keep it back to what he told me he wanted, which I discussed, which was like a 5th century Romano-Celt in a 5th century Romano-Celts environment, and so on. And I because he was a Romano-Celt, I had him had his sidekick, the way we'd worked it out, as being black. Because, it's happened in Robin Hood films since then, but there are a lot of black people around, and they never get mentioned in these things. And so I just had him as another Roman, from a different part of the empire, and the crumbling empire and all of that. But I think I made a pretty good job of it, if you wanted what he'd asked for. But of course he didn't. And at one point, he'd obviously been to see the rushes of Excalibur, which I hadn't seen. And at one point he says to me, why don't we have a scene where the guy's all in this armor? I'd already gone through the plate armor didn't come in for another 500 years, as it were, but nonetheless, he wants him in plate armor. He's all in plate armor, he says, and he makes love to this woman. How about that? And I'm thinking, well, it would be difficult. But he'd seen something like it on Excalibur. I can't remember. There was a scene. I didn't really like Excalibur much, so I didn't really.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I'll tell you what it is. It's the opening scene with Gabriel Byrne, where he plays Uther Pendragon, and it's when Arthur is conceived, and Gabriel Byrne is all in the armor. Yeah. So taking Arthur's mother, his queen, after a battle. It's like the opening 10 minutes.
Well, that's
of the film.
what he wanted.
It's exactly that.
And I couldn't give it to him. I mean, I just could not give it to him, given the nature of what I was supposed to be writing. And another point, I have them up in the north, and something I say something about Hadrian's Wall. And I've added in some piece of reference so you can see Hadrian's Wall. And he looks at me, and it's a photograph of Hadrian's Wall. He looks at me and says, was that real? I said, it's a photograph. And that was about the level on which we were. And in the end, he says to me, he says, what I want is I can't remember, one director, the dynamism of somebody, and the such and such of Kurosawa. He's decided, let's have them all walking, because of course in Kurosawa they're mostly all walking about, doing samurai strutting down the road and all the usual stuff. And I'm thinking, again, okay, but the horse was pretty fucking important to this particular period of time. It's a comical Hollywood producer stereotype. And the baffled, intellectual trying to help, trying to do what this guy is asking for, but reminding him that you can't have this or and that. You've got to have this or that, and so on. So it went on like that for several months, in which I became seriously involved with hard drugs. Quite rightly so. I couldn't have survived
quite rightly so.
Way, honestly. And at the same time, what I don't think Linda ever knew was that his assistant was hitting on me. So and she was driving me back and forth. She picked me up at home, where we lived we were living in North Hollywood. Yeah. and take me to Burbank or wherever it was we were going, that particular day, usually Burbank, usually nowhere very interesting. And she'd be hitting on me. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm sitting there thinking, you've just picked me up from my girlfriend's place. So I'm dealing with that as well, because I'm not what you call a serial lover or a whatever it is. Not a natural philanderer. I get very
not a natural philanderer.
Philandered. I stopped doing it. It didn't suit me at all. I was always the one who told what I was up to. I just couldn't stand somebody looking, baffled and wondering what I was doing. I'd think, no, I can't. Nobody should go through that. So I'd always, shot myself.
Yeah. So it sounds like, parts of the Hollywood equation were okay.
No.
Hard drugs, yes. Moral bankruptcy, no.
And
that's pretty much it, isn't
I had
it?
an agent for a while who, hang on, he was an agent. And then having got hold of, handling my film work as a film agent, Bobby Lickman. Bobby then decided to become a producer, which meant that he already owned my film work. It was just sort of ridiculous. And so suddenly Bobby is a producer, and I'm meeting these directors. This is for an Ulrich picture that he wanted to make. While I'm at the same period I was in Hollywood, I don't know if it was whether I'd made a trip or two back home, I don't know. But anyway, it was that period. And sort of starts courting me in a funny way. I'm meeting these directors. I've heard of some of them. Some of them are still in their early, but they're all good people. But I've no idea what. And some of them don't know why they're there. We get invited to Bobby's for dinner. And then Bobby puts on this sort of production, which I wasn't expecting. He puts music on the bloody record player. He darkens the room. He starts to describe the scene, and all of it's come out of a comic. I know exactly where he's got it from. He hasn't read the books. He's read Frank Brunner's comic version in, I think, Marvel. And so I'm thinking, what's going on? The music, I don't know, it's some fashionable music, but it's 4 bars of the same bloody music over and over and over again with slightly different tones on it. It's like Tubular Bells, which I can't stand. It drives me crazy. It's the sort of thing you put in prisons to make people go mad. Anyway, and I think to myself, I'm sitting there, there's Peter, whatever his name is, he became well-known later, Australian director, and Bobby and me, that's all it is. Yeah, Peter Weir, that's right.
Nice Peter Weir. Peter
very
Weir.
good conjurer.
Yeah.
Absolutely marvellous conjurer. Linda loves conjuring, and she just fell in love with him because he could say, is this your card? Or if you go to the refrigerator and look in, you'll find your card there. He really was a good conjurer. Anyway.
Mate, that is a superb anecdote. I've never heard that before, and now I'm never going to forget it. Well, Peter Weir is a great conjurer.
He was,
that's fucking awesome.
I said, I had no trouble. I didn't know who these people were, but most of them were affable, pleasant, and quite a few had read my stuff, so they were kind of interested. But I wasn't really trying to sell Ulrich at that time. I didn't really want to. Because in those days, the effects always took over the film. You couldn't help it. It was the way they were made. All the money went into, Harryhausen, as it were, and then there wasn't anything much left for actual acting actors.
And that's a great example. I mean, Harryhausen movies, whatever your position is on them, I know people who absolutely love them, some of whom work with me at Titan, but they're all about the effect sequences, and the scripts are rudimentary, and the performances are very poor from, B-list actors, aren't they? You never find an A-list actor unless they're playing a character part in it.
So that was it. I really didn't want to. Oh, at the same time, Ralph Bakshi had come to me, and I'd had a day with Ralph Bakshi, which was not the best day of my life. I did not like him. He's a big, this isn't to characterize fat people. There are lots of fat people I know and like, but he was kind of really unpleasant. So something, if you met him in a pub, you'd think, whoa, where's he been? What little girl has he been, chasing? it's not fair because I really don't know anything about Bakshi's private life, but he just had that sort of sleazy feel to him. So I had to sit in his fucking projection studio watching his version of Lord of the Rings. He did a rotoscope. And it was terrible.
The rotoscope
it was
version.
Just terrible. So I'm sitting there. I nothing against Fritz the Cat, which is his first success, and really he should have stuck in that area. I think he probably would have been all right. But anyway, so I had to sit through this awful rotoscoping, and while he's trying to get me to flog in Melrick, and in the end, what I did was I put the price up so high that he couldn't possibly. I knew he was a cheap bastard too. So I thought, okay, it's $1 million or nothing, as it were. I can't remember what it was. I was much more sensible than making it too big, but I made it too big for him. And so I got out of that one, and very glad I was too. I mean, it would not have been a happy time, but the same. I'm trying to think. I'm not even sure where in what sequence all these things happened, because I was out there for quite a long time, and I met Gene Wilder, which was great for me. A great fan of Gene Wilder. I met the guy who did performance. The other guy who did performance. Nick Rogue, who actually comes up and starts talking about dragons, and I'm looking at him like, what the bloody hell are you talking about? next movie, Michael will have dragons, drunk as a skunk. And I'm thinking, what? So I did have an interesting time. I'm not a great star. I take people as they are. I just am like that.
Yeah.
And
of course, so I get that.
I wasn't thinking, whoa, here I am, I'm meeting Christopher Lee, and Christopher Lee's was good because I think I put this in Hollywood. He's taller than me, and I was pretty tall in those days. I've shrunk a little bit since. And so I'm looking up at him. I mean, he must have been 6'4". Difficult for a screen actor, I have to say, because they can't get into the little screens. TV's terrible. You can only see their middles, really, because... Anyway, but you don't see many tall film actors. They tend to be short. I mean, I said yesterday, Iron Man towering over you in the movies, he would not be towering over you in real life. He's about 5'4", I think, Robert Downey. So he's shorter than Harlan Ellison, and Harlan was the shortest person. Barry Bailey was probably a bit shorter, but anyway, well in that league of midget. Anyway. So I did. I met some people I admired. I had, that I liked, and I had a good time. But I didn't want to make a fantasy movie at that time. I didn't mind making a historical movie where we didn't have to have many effects, many big effects. But I didn't want to make a fantasy movie. I just didn't, and I didn't want anybody to buy it. I wasn't trying to sell Elric in Hollywood. I was just trying to learn how to be a decent scriptwriter, really, because the final program I was so disappointed in, and I turned down the chance to do the script. So because I didn't think I was qualified. And that's why I did The Land That Time Forgot. Entirely that, Edgar Rice Burroughs asked me to do it, but apart from them wanting me to do it, I took the job because I thought, I've got to learn how to do this myself. I can't leave this in the hands of amateurs. And so that was why I did Land That Time Forgot. But back to Hollywood and working on whatever it was I was working on. Oh, Lancelot, that's right. That really was. I mean, it was a classic Nathaniel West type satirical, version of Hollywood. I know that many people are not like this. I was very unlucky. I got the kind of last of the Nathaniel West. I did the same thing happened on Land That Time Forgot. I got John Dark. Now, John Dark was a comedy producer. I mean, he didn't produce comedies, but he was like a comedy producer. He had, cigars that were twice his size, and called everybody baby, and did all the stuff, that you would, if you saw it on a Doctor Who, you'd think, nah, you're going off. This is too broad. This won't do. Bring it in a bit, but that's what he was like. Doug McClure, who was a very nice guy. I mean, he wasn't an A-list actor, but he was a professional.
Yeah. Actually, and the thing is, McClure was certainly of a far higher caliber than any Harryhausen actor. Doug McClure could properly act, and he had charisma, of course, right? You know, I mean, he was fucking great as Trampus in the Virginia.
Yeah,
he was brilliant.
He was a working actor. He was a practical working actor. He knew what he was supposed to do. He knew how to do it, and it was wonderful. Well, I wasn't working with him directly, but it was wonderful to have him in the mix. He taught all the British actors how to not do a knockout punch without actually hitting somebody. They were all learning from him, the little bits and pieces of Hollywood business, that they hadn't been taught at RADA.
That's phenomenal. Which it makes complete sense, because his screencraft, after all those years and years of working on those TV shows. I mean, Virginian, wasn't even a normal TV show, was it? It was essentially a season of the Virginian. The episodes were 90 minutes long.
That's right.
It was like making 22 movies.
There's no question of that. I mean, he was probably the most. Kevin, can't remember the director's name. Kevin, but he actually, it was his first movie, I think, first directed movie. And as far as direction was concerned, it wasn't that bad. I mean, I didn't like what happened to it, but that wasn't his fault. That was the producers, coming in and asking for volcanoes going off at the end of the picture and everything, which they'd actually promised me on their mother's lives that they would not do. And of course, immediately they think of I was trying to stay away from the usual tropes, the usual endings. And also it was part of of 3 books or 3 short books, and they were going to do the sequels. So I'm thinking, the bloody thing blow up when you're next going to do The People That Time Forgot. Jim Cawthorne stayed on. He was a bit more, I think, in love with Hollywood than with movies than I was. This wasn't Hollywood, this is Shepard. And so Jim stayed on The People That Time Forgot a bit longer than I did. I got off it almost immediately.
Yeah.
Kevin Connor. Yeah.
So it was Kevin Connor, wasn't it, who directed The Land That Time Forgot?
He was a pro. I mean, he may have been young, but he knew, he was a decent enough director. Yeah.
Oh, no, for sure. I mean, and he stuck with that genre was pretty much what he stuck with his entire career, because he did People That Time Forgot. He did another McClure, Warlords of Atlantis. He did, right?
I don't know if John Dark was all of them. You probably know the name, which I've just forgotten. It was Amicus.
It was Amicus. And it's all Amicus stuff.
Milton
it was Amicus
Subotsky
Productions. Yeah.
And the other guy, I knew them. I mean, I knew them socially. I'd never actually worked with them before, but and actually, Milton had once told. It was that. Right,
Max Rosenberg, wasn't it?
And Milton Subotsky and Max Rosenberg. I remember they were condescending to me because they thought that the pictures they made, were fairly crappy pictures. They had an idea that maybe they were, and maybe they were. But they'd bought Margaret Drabble's The Waterfall, I think, and one of Margaret Drabble's books.
Yeah,
and they were, and here I am, and I've already done a fair amount of substantial writing, and they're treating me like I'm a hack, as it were, just come on, and they're condescending to me. I say, we do Margaret Drabble, as well, and it's going on about now. As far as I'm concerned, much as I like Margaret Drabble as a person, she's a nice person, very nice person, but I'm not a great admirer of her books, and I don't have to be. She's not a great admirer of mine. It's just the way it is. But it's you can, this was the literary world talking to the scum of the science fiction world.
Yeah.
Or so they thought. And I'm sitting there being condescended to by these 2 idiots. And they, nice as they were idiots. And, it was a very, very strange experience. But, it didn't take long is the thing. I would never, when I wrote scripts, and I wrote some more because I wanted to get my hand in, they were never filmed and nothing happened. But I wrote them. I'd write to straight union rates. I wouldn't ask for above union, not norm, because it didn't seem to be that they were getting a professional. They were getting somebody who was trying to learn the business himself, So I saw that as being fair. If they paid me, just the basic, I would take the amount of time that was needed, which was usually about 3 days, but they thought it took months. And I made the mistake in the beginning with Kershner. He said, "Well, how long do you think the script will take you to do? If you come over to Hollywood?" And I said, "Well, probably about 3 days for the outline, about a week for the script." And there was this icy pause, and whoever was with, it was probably Sandy was with us. We were at the St. James Club, that club in Park Street.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I've completely forgotten what I was talking about. I suddenly remembered Park Street and how much I disliked that club. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's not even Park Street. Anyway.
No, we were talking about you basically the fact that the way you handled your writing assignments.
And I told him how long
you didn't charge him full whack.
He said,
you just
never say that. He said, he said, it may only take you 3 days and it may only take you a week, but you have to make it seem a lot longer than that and a lot harder. And most of my time out there was not really spent working, it was spent bullshitting, which I hate doing. I'm a worker. That's why I've got so much stuff. I don't go to the pub. I do go to the pub, but I don't go to the pub so much that I can't, produce this stuff. You don't produce that amount of stuff if you've been at the pub every night, as it were, or bullshitting on Hollywood. And I like to, get the job done and do it, make it a good one, and move on to the next one. But this was, it really was a genuine. He was crazy, and he would spend hours going on about his wife. He was in the middle of a divorce. So I was getting all this awful stuff that I did not want to know about, what a bitch she was, what this was, and I didn't know the woman. I did, she'd probably, I thought, if she was having my experience, I would divorce him. And then she'd phone and he'd be all kind of sweet and negotiable and trying to and I was getting sort of sick of that for a start. And then he'd talk about it again. And he kept rotten cantaloupes in his wardrobe, in his, where he kept his clothes, because he said they made them smell sweeter. So the whole bloody apartment smelled of rotten cantaloupe. He borrowed this house.
Ludicrous.
Somebody's house. It was in the hills. It looked over the whole of Los Angeles. It was a wonderful house. Great, and I had to go there every day. Working with him. I liked the house. I liked the apartment. I even liked the food, because his assistant was really giving me some very nice food because she was after me. And so I was doing all right from that point of view. It was only Kershner was the only fly in the ointment. And I think he made another film, a fairly successful film after a number of poor movies. But anyway, I think he died, didn't he? I think if he's not dead, he's going to sue the fuck out of me. So I probably hope. It's not John Dark.
John Dark.
I'm talking about Kershner,
John Dark was.
John Dark was the same.
Oh, Kershner's long dead. Yeah, Kershner died 10 years ago. You're completely in the clear, Mike. Yeah. And John Dark went about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I reckon.
Yeah, so, he lived a long time doing bugger all, because I'm not sure he did much after anyway, I don't know what he did. I do know, I knew Milton used to turn up at John Brunner's parties. He was this classic Jewish film producer. I mean, we all know Jewish film producers, and that's what he was. He was a classic. Absolutely,
absolutely. Of course, the guys who founded the business, that kind of cliche. No way to
characterize him, but that's who he was, and that's what he was like. And he talked like that, and he was very he was actually refreshing from my point of view at John Brunner's parties, because John used to have these I think he called them conversaciones or something. He had the idea of, well, I say he had the idea. He ran this sort of salon. Him and Marjorie had this salon, which he had, I think, once a month, if not once a week. I mean, they seem to be forever. Jimmy and I used to go there. Jimmy Ballard, he used to say he was going there for industrial espionage. And you'd always catch him in John's bedroom, where John had all his books and stuff. Jimmy was in there sort of nosing about to see what John was up to. Mostly what he had in his bedroom was sex books, hundreds of sex books. I mean, I'm thinking to myself, book 15, not my business. His sex life was always strange, kind of logical, like it was a sort of, Harry Harrison thought that John had invented himself as an author. He wore a velvet jacket, he lived in Hampstead, he was left wing, all of that stuff. Wasn't really fair to John. John was very sweet underneath all this stuff. He was, he was like everybody I know, a nerd in disguise. He's not going around with some big thick glasses, the nerdy suit. He's actually pretending to be an actual normal human being, but damn well underneath, just as I am, he's a nerd. And so he was a strange guy. And everybody who knew him in science fiction in England had stories about him. Sometimes you couldn't go through an entire evening without people just talking about John. He was a kind of focus because of his peculiar self-invented persona and the way he was. He was he was not really capable of normal expression. He didn't sort of get easy and drunk and pissed like the rest of us, and just hang around and talk balderdash. Some of it was very good.
Did you think
when he rose to his best, he could be brilliant. He spent a lot of his time, like many of us. I mean, I didn't have to go through this as much as a lot did. The only work, really, regular work, was from people like Don Wollheim doing ace books, which were essentially the novella from a pulp magazine, the doubles anyway, the novella from a pulp magazine, which they called novels, would be the first half of a double, and then another novella, just because this is how the science fiction magazines work, would be on the other side. And you could do that forever, really, because the magazines would providing you with it. John did a few magazines, but he worked directly for Wollheim a long time, doing ace doubles or not ace doubles, or just ace books. I have a huge admiration for Don Wollheim. I admire him and respect him far more than many do. He deserves far more than many do. He pirated The Lord of the Rings without pirating The Lord of the Rings and The Princess of Mars without pirating them, which he did out of sheer frustration because Tolkien would not sell American rights. He thought they were too vulgar. I knew a number of writers in those days, including the Peaks, who would not sell to America because they were afraid of what America would make of their books. And so Tolkien had never let the American rights be sold. I don't know a lot about Tolkien. I only know this, I'm not a Tolkien scholar. There's probably more to it than I'm saying, but this was the basis of it. And Don, who loved the books, couldn't get them. So eventually he discovered that they weren't in copyright in the States. Because they'd never been published there, they hadn't been established there. So Don brings out The Lord of the Rings in 3 paperbacks. I'm sure they would have killed Tolkien. I can't remember whether Tolkien was still alive or not then, because we know what they looked like. They weren't. They were commercial paperback covers, and of course began what is now a phenomenon. It started in America. It didn't start here or there. I'm in America, come to think of it, but where you are now, it did not start. And Tolkien, suddenly starts to get phone calls at 3 o'clock in the morning from enthusiastic high school students, as it were, or students, is where it was mainly the focus at that time, and starts to wonder what the hell's going on. I mean, Don immediately let those books go as soon as somebody stepped in to try to establish them, to repair the damage. because all Don wanted was the bloody things to come out. He didn't, he'd have paid for them, although he wouldn't have paid much. Yeah. And he
just wanted them to be out there and circulating.
Who's the editor of Lancer Books and a fan too, together in the 50s, probably put out all of the substantial fantasy fiction that had been published in English, and some that hadn't been published in English. They were as broad as they could be at the time. These are not educated men by a long shot, but they were great enthusiasts, and they were willing to, and classics, they accepted as classics, and published them as best they could in those days in the old paperback publishing world. Larry did The Dying, first time that really The Dying Earth had been a tiny edition before that, and he published me. He did the first Elrics and the first Conans, I think, and so on. So between them, and there were one or two others, but between those two guys really did begin what is now an established fantasy genre and everything, and everything it means, fans, all the rest of it. They just weren't there before Larry and Don. So I think, I don't know how I got onto this, but they. Oh, I'm talking about.
But it's Brunner, fascinating. Yeah.
John,
I think we got onto it from absolutely, John, and we got into John from I think Milton Subotsky's parties. So it's all completely legitimate discourse. This is what I love about chatting with you, mate, because I'm a great fan of pulling the string of the conversation and seeing where it goes. The fact that we made that leap from Milton's parties to John Brunner to Donald Wollheim.
I do that if I can on my Facebook page. I love it. I'll set a question like that I'm curious about. I mean, I really want to know what people have to say about it, and a conversation starts up, and that goes. That goes the same way anywhere. I like that too. Anyway, back to John Brunner, I suppose, to be fair. Yeah. John began to rise to the occasion when I started editing New Worlds. And I think it was just because he had an editor or in an atmosphere too. I mean, it wasn't just me, that he knew he could. Tom Dish said this. He said it wasn't worth writing your best for most of the magazines because they didn't like it when they got it. That apparently I was the only editor they felt, it was worth writing up to aspire to or whatever. I'm trying to be straightforward without sounding like an egomaniac. But
mate, you can. I think you've earned being an egomaniac. So I'm here to deliver the mania for you.
The first story go ahead. Give it. The Last Lonely Man. It had been turned down by every other science fiction market in the universe because John was very, he'd send it to everyone. It was a good story, a very good story. I happened to know who it was based on, even though I didn't know. He hadn't told me that, but I knew the guy that was the central character of this story, and he got him very, very. And so I published the story, and about 2 years later, it was on television, and John got his first TV thing. So it proved to be pretty popular once I published the thing, which sort of not proves, but it shows you what the difference between New Worlds and the other magazines was like. For some reason, we could just see this stuff, and it wasn't just me. Lang Jones was reading as well. I mean, we could just somehow spot it. And so John, after that, started to get more ambitious. And you got things like The Squares of the City and Stand on Zanzibar, and which we did
Stand on
some
Zanzibar,
of your New Worlds. He wouldn't give me the bloody manuscript to take away and read. He was paranoid. So I had to go over to his place for lunch. He said it wasn't much of a lunch, I have to say, but anyway, he said for lunch, and read the book while I was in his flat. So Margie was a good cook. I'm not saying it was a bad lunch, but it wasn't what I was expecting. I expected a better lunch. Anyway, So I sat there, read it, and I picked out. He helped me to pick out some pieces because I couldn't run the entire thing. It was huge, and to run it as a serial, it would have taken up issue, God knows. So I ran extracts from it, but it was very, very good. And so he did. Yes, towards the end of his life, he began to get fractured. He was no longer able. He didn't have the markets for the, call it hack work. I mean, it was better than hack work, but for the standard science fiction kind of story that he was writing for Wollheim, he just didn't have the market. Yeah. He'd had a great ambition to write a steamboat story, a Mississippi steamboat story. Now, this is a man with a cloth ear, no question of it. His one book set in America was called The Brink. It was an anti-bomb. It was a warning novel. And he'd been in the States, I don't know how many times. He could have heard nothing. He had no ear for dialogue at all. These people are talking about,
right.
I don't know, not even Fleetway Americans. They're even, we had stereotype Americans in Fleetway stories, but these are even worse than that, and talking in a way that no American would talk. I mean, it was a disaster, I thought, an artistic disaster anyway. About a disaster, but that was John. I mean, so he spent years doing this Mississippi book. I've spent some time in Mississippi myself, and I'm married to a Mississippian. But here's John doing this Mississippi book, and it was just, it was huge. Oh,
there's a very, very specific cadence to the way they speak.
Absolutely,
right? And
it was the music that attracted me
to
the it's the music of the voices and all the different cultures that made me move here in the first place. I didn't think I was going to be here this long, but I it was hearing the voices, Southern voices, and the mix, Black, Latino, and
that
absolutely.
glorious, oral melting pot that you get in the States. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Huge influence from music. Something you've made me think of, and it is that, who I think, funnily enough, I think two British authors who perhaps have captured American conversation the best are not two great authors, but two very prolific authors. The two main Piccadilly Cowboy guys, J.T. Edson and George G. Gilman. When you read their books,
no, you don't.
You don't get any sense that they're written by an English person at all. And they've totally nailed it while not being great artists.
Writers, not being good, solid writers. And Edson sold them in the States. That was the great thing. Is an English.
Oh, yeah.
And I think Ross Story, Jack Trevor Story's first wife, she was a Western writer. Jack wrote some Westerns too. I think she sold in the States too. I think probably we get inured to this. The way the blues gets into a little suburban lad's, bedroom in 1955 for me. How does that happen? And you're identifying with these guys. You're identifying with guys who work themselves to death with their hands most of their lives when they weren't doing a recording or two. And I don't know how it happened, but that's what happened. It happened in London. In Liverpool, it wasn't quite the same. Liverpool, it was more rock and roll, and they were getting direct stuff from Buddy Holly and the like, and it made the Beatles. No question of it. Didn't get what was going on in London was a different vibe, a blues vibe, and that's where the likes of Little Eric, stupid whatever his fucking name is, I hate him, Clapton.
Oh, Eric Burdon, that's a big. Eric Clapton, Burdon. And that's a big influence on. Eric Burdon's. I agree with you. By the way, mate, Burdon's amazing. Clapton leaves a lot to be desired, particularly as a human being. Frankly, as a human being,
does all this shit he's doing up the neck. You're thinking, come on, Eric, play a tune.
Yeah. You know what, mate? I actually think that this is almost the perfect moment to pause for this session, because we've literally just started talking we've just segued into music, which I think we could probably fill an entire podcast or two talking about. And that's what I'd love to get into next time around, because this journey through Hollywood's been epic. And the fact that we also finished up talking about John Brunner. By the way, I think I'm presuming the reason he ended up at those Milton Subotsky parties is because he wrote the script for the Terror Dogs, which was an Amicus
He probably
film.
kept it quiet. Jimmy Ballard was never particularly noisy about Last Days of Man on Earth either.
No, and these are. I mean, the truth is, the late '60s Amicus movies absolutely make The Land That Time Forgot and At the Earth's Core look like Oscar-winning masterpieces by comparison. I mean, in fact, I would say that Land That Time Forgot is kind of the high watermark. I mean,
not through any fault of anybody else. I must admit, with Milton and Max, who had some strange ideas. yeah.
But let's get into the music next time around, Mike. And that has been a great trawl through your Hollywood career in far more detail than we touched upon it last time. That's been brilliant. Yeah, I love those anecdotes, and you brought those characters to life.
I haven't written any autobiography, so this may be all there's going to be.
Well, we'll keep on rolling with it, mate. It's once again, Mike. It's great to see you, and I'll see you next time around for the next episode of Hard Agree.
Good luck to all your family.
You've been listening to Hard Agree. This episode was edited by John Horsley and Kenrick Regan, and our theme music, Golden, was written and performed for this show by Liverpool's finest band, Denio. Hard Agree is a production of the Spoilerverse and myself, Andrew Sumner.